Peace, Chiefs and Dares. It's Bronzebird here with another video. Before I begin, like and subscribe. Thank you. So, even though we're going through the pandemic and it seems as if we're on the verge of World War III, I always find it ironic and funny when it comes to election time or it's gearing up to the point that, soon there needs to be a way of having these discussions and these political debates is going to take place. There's going to be turd slingings about what this or that person did during their whole entire tenure of the political position that they was in. It is always funny because it reminds me exactly of what happened in last election season with someone like Donald Trump and Joe Biden, even though that Joe Biden was selected to be the president over Trump. Whatever little thing that Trump did or went against the establishment, or there was a plan in place to always just have Trump as the sitting man, as the destroyer within that bracket of what was going on as the president. They wanted someone that was going to be able to push an agenda forward. And so right now, there's this whole entire thing with the guy that I'm going to be talking about today, Andrew Cuomo, in which the reason I do this video is to make the stern connection between Me Too, cancel culture, and then involving the minority, AKA so-called Black people, into the conversation when it comes to voting times. Still, I find it very ironic when having these conversations because of the fact of the matter, two things happen. So-called Black people leave the church, and number two, so-called Black people collectively are starting to have some reclusions on the Democratic Party. So usually I always think it's the demographics that they're trying to get themselves to. And me being in the political field or looking at the political things that happened when I had dealings with certain people who knew about the political spectrum, I was able to see that when they're talking about the Democratic Party or they're trying to appeal to so-called Black people in particular, they're usually going for the older generations, i.e. silent generations, the boomers, and all these different things. They're usually on their way out. They know they couldn't pick up the same steam with Generation Z, or let alone the millennials. Generation X is kind of like fickle because it's like they can, but they cannot. But today I wanted to just make those connections, especially guy Andrew Cuomo I'm going to be talking about, who was the previous governor for New York, who had got called out on two primary allegations. Number one, for sexual misconduct, and number two, for his handling of the elderly when it came to the pandemic first starting. In which I believe the pandemic, it really was some messed up stuff that he was doing once the pandemic started. Then of course, the whole entire back and forth he had with previous Mayor de Blasio. So today he is replaced by Governor Kathy Hochul, who in accordance is trying to, build and make sure that, she's taking care of New York State while also trying to be in a relationship, as in a political fairness relationship, with Eric Adams, who is the second so-called Black mayor of New York City. So I'll be giving my commentary along the way about what I think. So peep.
There were rumblings that former Governor Andrew Cuomo was looking for a way back into the public eye. He just started to run TV ads proclaiming his innocence. And on Sunday, he found his way to a place where political candidates often go during the heat of an election season. In 1984, the Democratic Party was facing the daunting challenge of defeating incumbent President Ronald Reagan. Then, at the National Democratic Convention, New York Governor Mario Cuomo took the stage and, at least for one night, united the party with a sense of purpose.
In this part of the city, there are more poor than ever, more families in trouble, more and more people who need help.
His son, Andrew Cuomo, tried to do the same.
I know that whole entire memories with the mayor, Ed Koch, because, if you don't know, everybody knows that New York City is more important than New York State. I'm sorry to say that, but look, listen, let's be honest. That's the bread maker, that's the breadwinner for New York State itself. So I'm just thinking about that.
On Sunday, in his first public speech since resigning last August, amid numerous sexual harassment allegations and a federal investigation into his handling of COVID in nursing homes. He stood in front of a predominantly Black church in Brooklyn and said the Democratic Party is once again in crisis.
It's in crisis because they have a lot of agendas and a lot of stupid things that they're doing, and especially when you have a lot of people out there like AOC that's pushing her whole entire rhetoric on everybody, it's going to crash. We all knew that. But my thing about it is, I understand that Andrew Cuomo and just like the rest of these politicians, they always do this. They always got to go to a so-called Black church in order to appeal to the older so-called Black generation. They're not really trying to, they have a hard time reaching out to the younger so-called Black generation because they are more rebellious. They really know what's up, and they pay more attention to the political stuff, or maybe they just don't. I think mainly they just don't. They don't try to really pay attention that much because other things are important to them. And I start to notice that, you know, and this goes off the hamstrings of emotions. That's why they try to appeal to so-called Black people, especially the Democratic Party, in my idea, in my view.
Father, God rest his soul, used to say government is an honorable profession, but that politics can be a dirty business. When even the Democratic Party chooses to cancel people that they have a disagreement with.
Except this crisis Cuomo is referring to is cancel culture. He blamed it for pushing him out of office and even went as far to tell people that their votes were somehow stolen, not mentioning that he resigned when it became clear.
It's always that whole entire break. It's the same thing that happened with Donald Trump and the whole entire feud with Joe Biden when they sat up there and say them votes were stolen. I mean, honestly, when it comes to the politician, I always think of them as actors and actresses. You know, in one scene, they're doing a great thing, you know, especially with Andrew Cuomo's handling of when the pandemic first started. Everybody was so on odds, was looking at him like a hero. And he was like, oh, you know, he should run for president. He would make a great president of the United States. All of that was a scene. And everybody fell, so many people fell for the bait that this man right here did the right thing and all this other stuff. But he did that dirty ass scandal with the elderly in those nursing homes and not properly treating them when it came to the pandemic itself. Isn't that ironic?
He would be facing an impeachment trial.
They used cancel culture to effectively overturn an election. And that was their greatest arrogance. They didn't elect me. You did.
Lee Mirengoff, a political analyst, says Cuomo's speech clearly shows he is ready to be back in the public spotlight.
No, he's not. And the thing about it is that it usually, I think in my beliefs, usually they don't have a second chance. I mean, we'll see. But I mean, they know exactly what they want. They want the powers that be. Maybe Kathy Hochul can still take it this season. I mean, next election. I don't know who else they would have. I know there's a couple of people running for governor right now, but to have Andrew Cuomo come back, it's going to be a hellfire storm, especially with the brink in the era of the Me Too era and the sexual allegations. It would be a lot for him to get the winds of the people. He shouldn't even be focused on the so-called Black people. He should be focused on the women and probably the LGBTQ community, if that's his whole entire thing. But one thing about these politicians, there's been so many stories, so many allegations that came out true about the sexual misconduct of these leaders and, you know, more of these undercut sexual scandals that was going on behind closed doors. Because it's the same thing with the media. They do exactly the same thing. It's just a different sector.
I think what his thought process is, you know, how can I reclaim some of that standing that I had during the days of COVID?
But as Mirengoff points out, Cuomo's options are slim in New York.
He might be better advised to do something in terms of community service, run a program, help out. You know, he needs to turn the page on his political resume. And doing it this way is kind of like old school electoral politics.
Now, Cuomo's speech did land well with another political outsider, Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr., who pushed back against same-sex marriage when he was in office. He tweeted out that Cuomo should come to visit a church in the Bronx to speak with Hispanic voters.
That's all I have to say. Give your thoughts in the comment section. Peace.